Hey everybody, this is Dream, and we've got a 9-game slate on FanDuel for Saturday's slate. It's a pretty solid slate. I think we have 3 teams that are stackable. The Dodgers, the Minnesota Twins, and the New York Mets are the best stackable teams. And you could also mix in Houston if you really want to, and even St. Louis a little bit. But overall, I think those 3 teams are going to be the best stacks. We have a lot of good pitching available too, so it's going to be a little bit harder for people probably to pick which pitchers they want to utilize because lots of guys and good matchups. Some guys more consistent than others. Before I get into the players, I just want to say thank you guys to the Patreon fans. And if you want to become a Patreon fan, you can find that in the link below. You can also find Discord in the link below in the description. And then if you don't mind, just smash that like button and smash that subscribe button. So I really appreciate it. Anyhow, let's go ahead and get into the players themselves. So the first situation, obviously, is pitcher, and we actually have about 6 pitchers to choose from today. So first of all, we're going to talk about Shohei Ohtani against Seattle. Now he's pitched extremely well in games against Seattle this season. He has been getting strikeouts a ton, and he's got a lot of upside here. Of course, the game log here doesn't actually show because for some reason FanDuel misses it. But he's had some really massive games. He's got 50 to 60 point upside here, and I think he's been hitting lots of strikeouts in these matchups as well. I don't see any reason why he doesn't have the capacity to get through 7 innings and also get a quality start and get a bunch of strikeouts to go along with it. He's my top play of the day, and for good reason. He just averages a lot of points and he gets a lot of strikeouts. And while Seattle does have some hitters, he's really good against right-handers more, and so that's gonna be to his advantage. The next guy I really like is Aaron Nola. Now I don't like him as much as Ohtani because he is really inconsistent. You'll see here on the game log where he'll have big games and tiny games back and forth, and he has a lot of games in the 20s and 30s, and then he has a few that hit 50, 60, but then he kind of just averages out. And he's got a really tough matchup against Atlanta, so he's still a great pitcher and a good, and it doesn't matter really who he goes up against. Even against Atlanta, he had 39 in that game. He does get strikeouts, and Atlanta does tend to strike out some, so he does have an advantage there. But he's just a little bit more risky because Atlanta is a really good hitting team, and Atlanta had been kind of in a little bit of a slump for a few days, but of course yesterday they got back out of it and had a really nice game, so it's going to be tough for him to replicate what he's done against them in the past, and especially since everybody's trying to get to the top of the division there with Atlanta and the Mets, so I think that Atlanta is going to have a lot to prove in this particular game. Then let's go ahead and look at Zach Gallen for Arizona against San Diego. He's in a nice little plus matchup here. San Diego has not been playing well, and he's a good pitcher. He's had 50 fantasy points in 5 of the last 7 games, and in the worst game he had in those last 7 are 40. But he hasn't been very good against San Diego. He's had a good and a bad game against them this season, and before those 7 games, he wasn't doing nearly as good. So it's a little bit interesting. He feels like a guy that's probably going to have a pretty solid game. San Diego's going in the wrong direction right now, and he can get the strikeouts. He's just not super consistent with the strikeouts, but he's had some really good games lately, and so I do like him. Though you look at the opponents, a little bit weak, like Colorado, Philadelphia, Kansas City, San Francisco, Colorado, Pittsburgh. He's good, but it's got to have a little bit of a reservation there just because he's been inconsistent beforehand. But if you like the consistency, then he's definitely somebody you got to consider. Then let's go ahead and look at Chris Bassett for the Mets against Pittsburgh. Now, obviously, he's good against Pittsburgh, and if you didn't see in this video yesterday, I have to show it to you because it's too crazy. Let's see if I can pull it up here on Discord for you. That showcased it. Here we go. Yeah, here. Look at this. It is pretty wild. So this play happens, and let's see if you can see. Oops, sorry about that. This play happens, and watch the the third baseman for Pittsburgh. He's literally eating some sunflower seeds while play's happening. Not even moving, just hanging out. That's just wild. So, needless to say, the Pittsburgh Pirates are not exactly in super motivated to hit the ball well mode. And Chris Bassett is going to line up here for a nice little game against them. And he does have the capability to have a good game here. He has 50-point upside in this matchup. And yeah, I mean, but he's very inconsistent. You can see these two, 11, 13, 12, but then he has 58, 34, 34, 36, 58. Like, he's really inconsistent, but he's in a plus matchup, so it makes him worthwhile to take a look at. Another guy I like here is Urias for the LA Dodgers. He's actually been weirdly consistent. 40 fantasy point upside here. If you look at his games, he's really not had a bad game for a while. The last one was against Chicago on July 10th, and then before that, it was even a couple, I don't even know how long, May 14th. He's been really consistent. He's getting wins. Obviously, the Dodgers, score runs, so that does help him. He doesn't quite get the strikeouts that we love, but he does manage to stay through at least 6 innings, and that's important, and especially on FanDuel. And so he's really not giving up many runs either. So look at all these wins and quality starts. We love to see that on FanDuel, so he's definitely somebody you have to take into consideration here. And a very plus matchup against San Francisco at San Francisco, a very pitcher's ballpark. And then the last guy that I like here is George Kirby for Seattle against the LA Angels. Now he does have to deal with the issue that he's going to have to deal with Trout and Ohtani, but in 2 games against them, he's had 35 and 49 points. He's been pretty good against them, but he's been inconsistent against the field. He's had some bad games like Cleveland there. He had a bad game against Oakland, Toronto, Baltimore. He's had a couple off games, Boston. As the season progresses, he's just been all over the place and scores. But he's a good pitcher. But he's not quite getting the strikeouts that we necessarily want all the time. Though he does get some wins and some quality starts, but he's not doing the quality start thing near as good as some of the other guys that I've mentioned. But if you just need to save money, he's the cheapest option that I think you can consider on the particular slate. So let's go ahead and get into the catchers and first baseman. So we have a pretty solid set of players available throughout the different positions. At this position, our first guy is going to be Pete Alonso. $3,800, a little bit expensive for what he's been doing, but he's hitting the ball really well. And I think he's in a great spot here against Bryce Wilson, who's just not a good pitcher. And so the Mets are going to have a field day with this guy. And so Pete Alonso has home run potential, obviously. And, he's been hitting the ball pretty well. He's having a lot of big games, and so that's what we like to see. Another guy I really like here is Freddie Freeman of the Dodgers against Alex Young of San Francisco. So in this particular game, San Francisco's pitcher is not that great against lefties or righties for that matter. I was thinking it was only one, but it's actually both. So he's just somebody that we're going to try to target in some capacity. Freddie Freeman's probably the harder guy to roster out on the team simply because of his price. Some of the other guys are a little bit cheaper, like Justin Turner. But overall, he's still somebody you got to consider just because of his output of 18 fantasy points a game for the last 10. That's just ridiculous. And then we have Paul Goldschmidt, who's averaging about 9. A little bit low for him, but he's in a good situation here, and he's got a plus matchup, and he's been hitting pretty well as of late. And so I think he's in a situation that he can hit a home run. And then Dalton Varsho. Now he's in not the most ideal matchup against Musgrove, but I kind of feel like this game might have some home runs in it just because of the weather and stuff, and because this is going to be a game where a lot of the guys on these 2 teams really look pretty decent, despite the fact the pitching's a little bit tougher. He has been kind of boom or bust lately, but he's still somebody you got to consider here, I think. And then finally, I have Dan Vogelbach. Now, he has been absolutely terrible for a while, but he did hit a home run yesterday, so that does help. And he's had 2 good games in a row. But I'm just putting him as a very boomer bust Hail Mary because he has home run potential in this matchup. and the Mets are going to be favored heavy to score a lot of runs, and he can definitely score them. But he's just been really bad. Like, look at all these bad games: 0-0-0-3-3-0-3-0-3. Yeah, I mean, this is not good. But he might hit a home run, and if he does that, which he did yesterday, maybe he's starting to heat up again, and he'd be somebody you want to take a look at, and against a really bad pitcher. At second base, we have Jose Altuve at Houston. He has been hitting the ball pretty well. 10 fantasy points the last 10 games each, and he's had a couple of off games, but he's still hitting the ball really well, still getting hits, and that's what we like from him. He's pretty consistent. Then I like Jeff McNeil for the Mets. Mets are going to show up a lot here because they got a nice plus matchup. And he's been kind of boom or bust, but he's pretty good in this matchup. Not only that, but he's got home run. He doesn't have home run potential really, but he's got RBI potential because they're probably going to get a lot of guys on base, and so he'll have some advantage there. And he can also play an outfield if you want, or utility obviously, on this particular slate. And then we have Andres Jimenez for Cleveland. I really like what he's been doing lately. Hitting the ball pretty well, having some pretty good games. A little bit not as high as some of the guys that are on the list, but he's also pretty cheap at $2,800. And then I have two guys that are like super cheap. One being Jonathan India, who hasn't been hitting the ball well really lately, but he's kind of in a plus situation against St. Louis, and he's got the advantage of being cheap. And then Colton Wong is kind of in the same scenario. He hasn't been hitting the ball well at all, but he is a guy that can hit home runs, and so sometimes he, becomes useful. This game should be at home, so that should help him hopefully get back on track. He's been having a little bit of a rough go as of late, but he still has the potential to have a good game, and so I do like him here in the slate. But he's also a Hail Mary cheap option, basically. At third base, we have Jose Ramirez for Cleveland. He looks like he's in a really great spot. He's also been hitting the ball pretty well lately. He's had some pretty big games, getting a home run and a bunch of hits and stuff. So I really like what he's doing. He's pretty expensive, though. Alex Bregman's another guy that I think, and he's a little bit less expensive, that I think is really in a good spot. And he's going up against Cole Irvin of Oakland. Now, weirdly enough, Cole Irvin has actually pitched some pretty good games against Houston, even though he tends to not be that great of a pitcher. So do be aware of that. I'm not sure that Houston's the greatest stack simply because he tends to do good against them. Nolan Arenado is another guy I really like for St. Louis. He's averaging almost 10 fantasy points a game last 10, and he's having some nice big games. He's kind of having a couple. He's either scoring like 19 or he's scoring 0 and 3. So, but he's been playing a lot better than, like, if I had to choose between Arenado and Goldschmidt, I would choose Arenado right now. Then cheaper options, we have Justin Turner for the Dodgers, $3,300. I feel like he's too cheap for the production he's putting up. He's had some really good games lately, and he should be able to continue that in this plus matchup against San Francisco. And then I also have Kyle Farmer for Cincinnati. He's been playing pretty well too. He had a home run yesterday. He's a little bit boomer bust, but I still think he's somebody you have to take a look at with his price point being at $3,000. And then at shortstop, we have some good options. Carlos Correa is absolutely murdering the ball. 16.5 fantasy points a game. Jeez, oh Pete, I just like what he's doing. He's hitting the ball hard, hitting for contact. And most games he's getting hits. I mean, he's only had, I think, one game since September 3rd that he didn't get a hit. And so that's pretty good. And he's scoring a lot of points. And so he's somebody that I really want to try to fit in the lineup. Not only that, he's actually not that expensive on FanDuel, $3,600. Then we look at Lindor. And he's not quite as good, but he's still hitting the ball pretty well. And he's in a nice big old plus matchup here for the Mets. And so I like him in this matchup as well. And he's $3,700. If you want to pay up a little bit more, you can go to Trey Turner, who's averaging number 17 fantasy points a game. This position is crazy. And he's just been hitting the ball extremely well as well. He hadn't even had a bad game since September 5th. So overall, just several really good options there. And if you need to save a little extra money, you can go down to Willie Adams, who's been hitting home runs lately. Absolutely just torching the ball. But he's a little bit boomer bust, but he's been hitting the ball extremely well. And then if you need to save super amount of money, you can get down to Jeremy Pena, who has gotten out of his slump officially, I think, and is starting to hit the ball pretty well and get some hits at least each game. And so that's what we like to see out of him. At that price point, he's somebody you can take a look at. And then finally, for the outfielders, first of all, we're going to talk about Jordan Alvarez. And he has absolutely had a massive game yesterday. 3 home runs. He's had 5 home runs in the last 5 games. 3 yesterday, obviously. Scored almost 60 fantasy points. And he's had 59, 15, 34, 12, and 30 in the last 5 games. If you can afford him, I would actually afford him more than I would afford Trout and Judge in these matchups. My goodness, this dude is just absolutely crushing the ball, and he's got a much better matchup from that perspective. Then we have Harper for Philadelphia against Atlanta. Now, Ordozzi, the pitcher he's going up against, this is like he's had one good game since he's been to Atlanta, and that was against a weak team. I feel like Philadelphia is going to have a good day against him, and so he's somebody that I think you have to take a look at. A little bit boomer bust, but still somebody to take a look at. Aaron Judge, I mean, obviously he's hitting the ball extremely well. He's having good games almost every game. Sometimes they're getting walking him, but then he's getting home. He's even had a couple steals recently, so he does have tendency to get you some points that way. And then Trout's obviously somebody you can try to count on. Now, he might be the only guy that scores for the Angels against George Kirby, but he couldn't still do it. And he hit one yesterday, too. He's had a string of just really good games. I mean, he had that string of home runs, but now he took a two-game home run day off type deal, but now he's back at it. So then we have Schwarber again for Philly. He's a little bit less expensive at $3,400. I like his price too, and he's been playing pretty well, and so I really like him in this plus matchup against Atlanta. And then I have Acuna for Atlanta. Aaron Nola is a really good pitcher, and so you do have to be careful with him. Acuna finally got a home run after a long drought, and so I look for him to try to, get another one. And he's pretty much matchup proof when he's playing well, which he has been playing pretty well lately. He's had a couple off games, but for the most part, he said he's feeling good right now, and when he feels good, he tends to hit the ball well. And then we have Kyle Tucker for Houston. Obviously, not quite as good as Jordan Alvarez is playing right now, but he's no slouch either. I mean, look at these numbers. And so I think that this is a guy that you can potentially, if you decide to go a Houston stack, you could definitely sneak him in there. Brandon Nimmo is a guy I really like for the Mets. He has some really good upside in this particular matchup. He's been hitting the ball really well, too, as of late. 13 fantasy points a game. Barshow, again, I've already mentioned him. And then Michael Harris is a guy I really like here. He is absolutely just crushing the ball. I mean, this guy has been hitting the ball extremely well lately. He's getting hits in almost every game. He's making hits in these, crucial situations. Yesterday, he had a RBI single, or I think RBI, I thought it was actually a double, but I guess it just got registered as a single. But anyhow, he's just been getting hits in the most opportune times, and so a lot of times he's going to score you 7 or 10 points, but that's exactly what you need out of him. So then we have 2 guys that are Hail Mary options. Juan Soto for San Diego against Arizona. For obvious reasons, he has not been hitting the ball well, but he finally had a game where he got a couple of hits yesterday, and he scored 19 fantasy points here. His price point is too cheap for his potential, but like I said, look at the stats. He's had a lot of really bad games, so if he can start getting out of the slump, then he's somebody you can take a look at. It's still a little bit of a tough matchup against Zach Gallen, though. And then also Glencario Stanton. He's also just too cheap. He's just a boomer bust home run hitter. He might go for 30, or he'll go for 3 or 0. So it's just kind of hit or miss on him. But that's pretty much what you have on that. With both Soto and Stanton. So with that said, I think it's a really solid slate. I actually really like the slate. You can definitely mix and match a lot of different teams and stacks and stuff and try to make good quality lineups. So if you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Make sure to check out Discord. Make sure to check out Patreon. Make sure to hit like and subscribe. And have a nice day, guys.